Hello folks, this is Soul with another video, and with only a few short months left until the War Within launches, now's the time to start helping you build up and prepare you for professions in the next expansion. This is going to be the first in a series of guides, and in this first video we're going to cover the changes between Dragonflight and the War Within, and how we're going to adapt to those changes in case the rage and the outcry stop happening to work. If you're brand new to professions in World of Warcraft, I might lose you, because I'm not going to be going over like the really rudimentary stuff. I want to make that clear. One goal of this guide is to help those of you who may have found Dragonflight professions to be intimidating or complicated, but you do want to learn, whether you're a solo player who wants to make really cool things for themselves, or if you want to make oodles of gold in the market. And if it feels like I'm going too slow, I'm gonna, of course you can use the navigation thing to get to where you want to go. I don't intend for these to be a series of like step-by-step instruction manuals that guarantee results, just something to empower you to make better informed decisions. In this case, whether you'll even bother with professions despite all the changes. So if you don't mind, like the video if it's useful, subscribe for more coverage, share this with others, and you can catch me live on Twitch to talk shop, shoot the breeze, or whatever. Let's start with the biggest change coming to professions overall, and it's the replacement of inspiration, which helped to determine quality. And while the juggling of quality items is following us from Dragonflight, it's going to be more straightforward and easier, clear to understand. It might not feel like it from just a watch of this video, but in practice, the difference will definitely be felt. A quick reminder, materials, reagents, and consumables have 3 ranks, gear has 5 ranks. The quality of crafted goods depends on your skill, your specializations, your tools, and the materials that are used. Inspiration was a stat that gave a chance of ranking your finished rank 1 rank higher. So if you were only okay at making a potion, you had a chance at making that potion, more than okay. Inspiration caused a lot of confusion though, because it sort of devalued your skill, your tools, and all that stuff I mentioned if you got lucky. And crafters had to keep on relying on this luck all the way until they mastered a certain specialization fully, and then they didn't need the inspiration at all. It was very weird. Now, it still exists in Dragonflight, but we're leaving that behind, and in the War Within, it's gone. The notion of making a thing and having a chance for it to be made at a very high quality, done. It's no more. There's no more having to tell the client to, hey, can you send me more materials so I can retry for a rank 5? There's no spending your precious artisan metal to go towards guaranteeing a craft, more on that later. There's no more sending an order back to the client because they accidentally asked for a rank 5 in a personal order and you'd rather rely on inspiration procs instead, so you ask for a rank 4. Inspiration made how we communicate the crafting process really confusing, and it was hard to learn too. Replacing this is a resource. It's not a stat, but it's a resource called concentration, which will need some explaining as well, but it's much easier to understand in practice. So let's say that you're crafting a sword, and based on your skills and the material used, it's going to be a rank 4. You can see that right on your sheet. Now you can spend concentration to bring this or boost it up to a rank 5 with just the click of a button. The amount of concentration that's needed, it depends on the distance between your current skill level and reaching that next rank. So I guess in this example, I can make a rank 4 item on my own. Cool. And I'm this far away from making it into a rank 5, and my skill and concentration cost reflect that above. The further you are away from getting a rank 5, the higher the cost, and naturally the closer you are, the lower the cost. And well, I guess I'm kind of skipping ahead, but later in the expansion, a crafter who has mastered making this sword and is working with the best materials, they're not going to need concentration at all. Now, racial bonuses can help a crafter get to this point marginally sooner, and I'll explain that a little bit more when we get to our more specific guides. As for the resource itself, it depends on the crafting profession, but it takes a few days to refill your concentration from fully empty. There's no way to refill your concentration through potions or buffs, but we're going to talk more on that in just a little bit. You can sort of look at this resource, this concentration thing, like kind of sort of a daily cooldown sort of system, but as you gain more skill and knowledge, the feel of a daily cooldown will actually diminish over time. It gives that kind of payoff for the investment that you put towards improving your skills and of course choosing the right materials. And let me make it clear that this doesn't stop a crafter from like making things at all. We're just talking within the space of items at like maximum quality. Consider your play habits around how this concentration thing would work. You want to ask yourself if you intend to craft very high level items every day, which means a lot of work towards your crafter and wanting to work with only high quality materials. Do you only play occasionally, to where you look at concentration as something that's considered wasted if you didn't at least use it on occasion? You know, like maybe an alchemist or an enchanter can possibly take lower ranked materials to make just a handful of max ranked potions or enchants to sell every few days. Or will you consider making multiple professionals in order to kind of multiply your concentration and fulfill more high-level orders? These are all valid strategies, adding layers of complexity to your crafting plans. Multiple alts, for concentration, it's not really my style, but hey, it might be yours. But what concentration means for both you and the market is this idea of talent scarcity. It's a made-up phrase, but what I mean by it is that early in the expansion, it's going to feel as if crafters have cooldowns in order to create the best quality goods, and they're going to monetize that on a limited, as if it's like a limited resource. Of course, on the flip side, solo and casual crafters have this very easy resource that they can count on for guaranteed quality of their own crafts or for like limited sales. So regarding concentration, you can't just drink a potion to refill it, but supporting concentration is a stat called Ingenuity. It is a luck-based proc that refunds a portion of the concentration that you spent on a given craft. So okay, the RNG isn't totally removed from professions. Instead, it's being shifted entirely onto you, the crafter. Let me explain. If you're accepting a job from the client and concentration is needed, as far as they know, you can make whatever it is that they're asking for. I mean, that's why you took the job. What they don't know is if, after you complete the craft, was your concentration used up or not, meaning that you can possibly continue this high-level crafting for longer. Now, if we think of this in kind of Dragonflight terms, it's sort of like you're using an illustrious insight to max out an item's rank, and you get a chance to be refunded that insight. It's a little bit oversimplified, but basically that. Let's also look at this from the consumable perspective, like flasks, potions, enchants, or whatever. Higher level crafting stats, including Ingenuity, means that you can craft more than what you thought you could. So, like maybe you thought you can only craft that flask 20 times when you activate your concentration, but hey, maybe it turns out that you can craft it up to 30 times. Now, keep in mind, in Ingenuity proc, it's not like multi-craft or resourcefulness. It's simply a chance for you to boost your high-level crafts for longer. You can still have that concentration, but you still need materials to actually keep producing. And there are external buffs to help you along with this Ingenuity stat, including tools, enchants, finishing reagents, and a file. If you're a mostly solo crafter though, Ingenuity has, I'm gonna say that Ingenuity has less value to you. If you only pop on every few days to make a bunch of high-ranked potions, it's still nice if you can make a few more. You're going to learn that concentration isn't something that you just want to leave capped because, you're letting money slip from your fingers. But as you're developing your profession, Ingenuity is probably going to be the lowest priority stat to invest into. You're going to save that probably for last. Because luck was mostly taken out of the equation, the relationship between raw materials, crafting reagents, and crafted items is much more tightly tuned and balanced. Now, there are exceptions to these rules. There are certain recipes that break this, but here's the general breakdown of what I've learned about material ranks and what they can produce based on all this beta info. Rank 1 materials produce low-rank products or reagents, and it's not considered to ever be a path towards making the best quality items. This applies even to low-level recipes like engineering bolts and health potions, which in Dragonflight we were able to make those at max quantity, or max quality with very, very little effort. The consequence is that there's going to be a much more clear supply and probably a demand for low effort items, possibly even epic crafted gear at low quality, because these materials are at least being set up to be very, very cheap, and I'll explain more in a bit. Rank 2 materials produce better products, and in the hands of a highly skilled crafter, Rank 2 materials can make the best quality items, even mythic level gear. The drawback is that for most recipes, the master crafter will need to use a huge amount of concentration. It's arguably more worth it for the client to always provide the highest quality materials that they can get, otherwise you, as the crafter, can probably charge an arm and a leg for spending your precious concentration. But a solo crafter who's just making items for themselves, they don't share that same urgency, and they can afford to use these cheaper materials. I'm just trying to say a bunch of times that solo crafters and casual folk, they're really coming up pretty good in this expansion. Rank 3 materials are the path to making the best items, as well as sustained crafting by using little to no concentration, but it's going to be mostly the audience of like the big crafters, the industrial crafters, that are going to be using this. Now, I don't want to say that rank 3 materials are the most efficient way to craft, because really there's no telling how much high quality materials or reagents are going to cost. It's hard to quantify how much crafters will charge even when provided with good materials, but the baseline is going to be as usual. It's going to be as high as we can get away with. And I want to add some emphasis to this. This philosophy applies to both finished items like armor and crafting reagents like ink and alloy and bolts and more. You need good stuff to make the good stuff. So for the player who wants to make gold through the auction house, there is a very viable path to being a producer of these middle tier reagents. It wouldn't be so unlike an alchemist who can blow all their concentration to score as many multi-craft procs of flasks as they can. Unfortunately, selling armor and weapons, beyond outright like selling like PvP gear, like that feeling isn't coming in the War Within really, but in the end, what you get out of selling armor or weapons or potions or alloy, what you get at the end of it is gold. So it's really up to us how we want to respond. So it's being set up that in the War Within, rank 3 gathered materials, as in herbs or in skins, they're going to be in consistent demand. Early and late into the expansion, they're going to be required for high max quality materials, which again follow the same quality rules. Rank 1s will be the price floor, I guess, and rank 2s are going to be what people will, I guess, settle for if they want something good, but they can't afford the best. The success of Blizzard's intent here relies entirely on the supply of quality materials that are gathered. We've seen how in Dragonflight this wasn't handled very well. Rank 1 materials stopped appearing for skilled gatherers. Inspiration made it so that it was possible to max a craft with rank 2, sometimes even rank 1 material sometimes, and that disrupted the demand for rank 3s. But in the War Within, there are clear divides on what each rank of material can and cannot do. Oh, and there's more. A post from the WoW team indicated that on the gathering side of professions, even the master gatherer will still end up picking up rank 1 materials with a chance for rank 2s and rank 3s. My personal testing is limited, so this is a very, very rough estimate, but my max level gatherer had around 50% of their gathered materials be rank 1s, meaning that there's going to be far, far fewer rank 2 and 3 materials circulating. Combine that with the more clear-cut purpose of material ranks that I described earlier, and we can speculate that rank 3 materials will be pretty hard to come by. They're either going to be, well, they're both going to be hard to get, and they're going to move really fast. It's to the point where refining materials might end up being viable at some stage of the expansion, especially maybe during early progression. Somehow I don't see refining to be a very regular or constant thing that players are going to do throughout all of War Within, but it might be a useful part of the gathering toolkit when higher ranked materials are that scarce. What's both cool and also very scary though, Blizzard can simply put their thumb on the scale and adjust the ratios of how much of what quality drops and end up affecting a lot of the market. Like if there's a shortage of rank 3 ore, it means that only master alloy smiths are going to be able to work with rank 2 materials to make rank 3 alloy for better crafts. That or miners are going to want to consider refining their lower rank ore to higher ranks if the supply is that bad. And again, it's going to spill into a shortage of rank 3 alloy, and well, you can see this cascading effect that'll happen really quickly. Whatever the case though, career gatherers can rejoice because they're positioned to pretty much be a winner throughout the entire expansion. But of course, that's if Blizzard is proactive on drop rates and, as usual, is good at fighting off bots. Yeah. And who's to say that Blizzard wouldn't increase the drop rates either if the economy wasn't working out so great? Supporting our future struggles with inventory are warbands, and specifically the Warband Bank. Unlocking the bank only costs 1,000 gold, and it gives you 90 slots. It's the same size as the reagent bank, which, by the way, you still have. The Warbank, as I call it, can include up to 5 tabs or 450 inventory slots accessible from any character on your Battle.net account, including other WoW accounts. The very cool thing about the Warbank is that you can configure it to be used as a reagent bank, meaning that when crafting, the game will pull from this bank. So there's no more having to trade around materials and mess around with the mailbox. I can buy a bunch of herbs and throw them into the Warbank, and then my alchemists and my scribe on separate characters can freely pull from them. As a crafter, you'll want to exercise a lot of discipline to make the most out of what the Warbank offers, because while buying the first 3 slots is, I guess, fairly affordable, the last 2 are really expensive. So I have a few general tips on how to treat the Warbank. First is to consider it as a reagent bank for the most current expansion as your #1 priority. Now, you can throw any non-BOE item into the Warbank, but you're not going to get any value out of it if you're just filling it up with crap. What's the point of spending 2.5 million gold on a bank that you're going to fill with stuff that you got during the Bush administration? The same goes for warbound items like gear. Yeah, it's nice you can store some of the gear that you found in your Warbank, and there's even a toy giving you access to the Warbank on the field. My advice though, you ought to just send gear to your intended character directly. If there are items sitting in your Warbank left untouched for at least a week, you'll want to consider sending those items to the character who's most likely to actually use them. The Warbank just isn't ideal for long-term storage like the Void storage, and you're paying that much for it. What should be in the Warbank are materials that are shared between multiple characters, and I'm talking about, the easy stuff like herbs and ore and skins and cooking materials. You should only deposit profession-specific materials if you have more than one character who uses the same profession. So, for example, uncut gems for jewel crafting, they can stay on your jewel crafter unless you have one jewel crafter that's spec'd only for ore processing, and then they drop all of those gems into the Warbank, and then you have like 2 or 3 gem cutters of different types who are processing what's made differently. Otherwise, you just want to use your current character's bank and reagent bank. Again, you still have that, and then keep those clean too. By setting up rules like that, you'll discover that maybe you don't need to drop 2.5 or 3 million gold in the pre-patch. If nothing else, buy the Warband bank tabs on a need basis. Don't stretch your gold, don't buy WoW tokens, just don't rush, please. Okay, let's talk about crafting orders and how much of that has changed. One annoyance that doesn't seem to have been addressed: I can't order multiples of items, or I can't create duplicate orders in case I want a bunch of potions or alloys made for me, but I guess mass purchases are what the auction house is for, right? I also still can't request for a certain quality rank in a public order, which I know is going to irk people, but I'm going to leave that debate to the comments. As a plus, it does appear that once again, public orders will require all materials to be provided, meaning I can clear out my ignore list, but I don't know, maybe those aren't the kind of people I want to interact with in the first place, yeah. The addition that is a very big deal is the NPC crafting order system, which is what virtually all crafters are going to end up engaging with to certain degrees, probably high. Functionally, it's like receiving a bunch of personal work orders from NPCs. These aren't public, and no one can snipe these away from you. We've been told that these work orders refresh every few days, not unlike world quests. But unlike requests from players, some of the orders you'll see might be for recipes that you don't even have. Many of them ask us to provide missing materials, great, and may ask for a quality rank that we need to spend concentration on, and even then, it might still be out of reach due to our specialization and our skill level being too low. So why do them, right? Completing these work orders is going to be essential for crafters who, in Dragonflight, might have had a lot of trouble skilling up with their professions. Real quick, we need to cut away and point out how to unlock the different specialization branches in War Within. You'll unlock your first at skill level 25, and then more at levels 50, 75, and 100 if your profession happens to have 4 branches. It's similar to the start of Dragonflight, but here's what's changed. Unlike before, it's much easier to skill up without being dependent on high-level crafting orders to unlock additional branches. And now we have these NPC crafting orders to support us, because like regular crafting orders, they can provide that first craft bonus and skill ups. But that's not all. Every crafting order is like a mini quest, providing rewards like Artisan Acuity, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and recipes, even a goodie bag that contains some useful items, also crafting knowledge. In fact, from the looks of it, NPC crafting orders are going to pretty much replace the weekly profession quest that we had in Dragonflight. Completing as many of these orders as you can is important, but it's not punishing if you don't, which brings me to talking about crafting knowledge in the War Within. Crafting knowledge was a pain point for many in Dragonflight, like you only got so much per week. You could hard grind dragon shards of knowledge for this stuff, which was really rough, and you could fall behind if you weren't keeping up. In the War Within, there is no dragon shard of knowledge. In fact, knowledge is going to be treated not unlike seasonal currencies, where players can only progress up to a certain cap, while people who are behind, they have an opportunity to get mostly caught up. For dual gatherers who won't be doing anything with NPC crafting orders, this is going to be managed by simply having those, those extra bonus knowledge that you get from picking stuff. It's going to just keep dropping until you're caught up. It's pretty simple. Now you're still putting in the work, but you've got a path without the waiting. For crafters, we're back to crafters now, it's a little bit different, and we'll refer back to the NPC crafting order screen. Knowledge gained through here is what falls under this caps and catch-up system, while one-time bonuses like profession treasures and the first-time crafts, those are separate. The screen you see reflects someone who's in this catch-up mode, and they're gonna basically see more work orders offering crafting knowledge than other people will. The small drawback though is that according to Blizzard, NPC work orders only update twice a week, as I've explained. In any given week, players who are caught up, they're only gonna see a handful of work orders, while those who are behind are going to see more when they're in this kind of catch-up mode. The idea of catch-up in this case is like having, I guess, double or triple XP as opposed to making a new vault or logging in after a few months and the game's like, hey dude, here's 200 knowledge for free, or here's like a whole, here's like 10 pages worth of crafting orders. So cutting back to NPC work orders, early on, no, we're not going to be able to complete every work order every time, and depending on the circumstances, many players might, quote, fall behind even if they're very active. The takeaway though is that there's always going to be more work orders coming. There will always be an opportunity to get caught up within just a few points. Replacing Artisan Metal is Artisan Acuity, which functions in a similar but kind of improved way. I mentioned that it's earned by completing NPC crafting orders, and is also earned in just about every instance that you earn crafting knowledge, from your first crafts to your profession treasures and more. Since dragon shards of knowledge aren't a thing anymore, the consistent source of acuity will be from these NPC orders. In Dragonflight, metal was used for recrafts, creating profession tools, and to purchase recipes, and it's no different in the War Within. In fact, you need a chunk of this acuity to make even basic profession tools, which might sound kind of horrifying. However, unlike Dragonflight, there won't be an illustrious insight kind of item to make. Concentration is filling the roles of both inspiration and insights. Instead, your extra acuity can be used to buy loot bags for your professions, which include basically extra resources. This is going to be great for gatherers who will also be earning acuity but now have a vendor to spend it on. Something else interesting to point out, the vendor who's selling these bags and recipes for all the professions has no reputation at all. We can just go for the recipes that we want day one. Some of you might have been waiting for me to mention recipes locked behind renowned factions. That's not a thing either, although you can earn some bonus knowledge points as you hit renowned milestones. Keep in mind that thanks to warbands and account-wide rep, this is just going to be kind of a nice little bonus that you only have to work towards once. Specializations were one of the biggest pain points in Dragonflight professions. By and large, it hasn't changed much in the War Within, but it has changed, and arguably for the better. The best way I can describe this is to get right to some comparisons. Let's say we're a blacksmith and we want to make a very high quality shield. In Dragonflight, in order to do so, we needed to plug points into a path like this here on screen so we can learn how to make shields in the first place. 20 points was needed at the bare minimum, but of course we needed a lot more points to make this shield at a better quality, preferably max quality. Some of these points went into a different specialization altogether, like on this tree. On top of that, with inspiration in play, we needed our skill to be at just the right level, and our inspiration bonus to be at just the right level, so when a proc went off, the bonus skill would be just high enough to nail a rank 5. It's kind of ridiculous how it turned out, and there was a path, but it was just pretty cumbersome. Now here's how it's different in the War Within. Under armor smithing, I can branch off right away and learn heavy armor, and then progress towards learning shields, so fewer points are spent from the start. Also, the relevant skill points are only contained on this tree. And finally, since concentration replaced inspiration, I technically only need to put in as many points as I need to rank for the item, and then if I wanted to, let concentration take care of the rest. From there, any additional points will simply make me spend less concentration to achieve the same result, unlike inspiration where additional skill points didn't mean anything. So it's cool in the War Within, where every skill point immediately counts towards making me better. It gives me this feeling of incremental improvement. Not every profession is going to be this straightforward. Each profession handles this differently, and there are multiple builds that I'll go over in future videos. I don't want to confuse you here. The point is the specs are a bit more straightforward, a bit easier to understand, but there's still room to make mistakes. And so far there's no room for like respecializations or temporary resets, nothing like that so far. Even though specs are easier to understand, I still would have liked it if the game would at least refer to relevant specializations in all of its recipes. That way players could feel more sure that their choices are going to the right recipes, but I'll leave it to an add-on like Craft Sim to point this out for us, since it seems like that is going to be supporting the War Within when it launches. And that's why this is only the first of many videos that I'll go over each of the professions with build examples and recommendations. They might not be the best ideas, but I do hope that it gets you thinking and, more importantly, learning. Personal take now, I think there have been significant improvements in the overall design, with the biggest hits being the replacement of inspiration and the NPC crafting order system. Those two additions are going to do a lot to make the progression of our specs feel less complicated and give a constant path towards progression, and doing away with the feeling of being hopelessly behind if we happen to be a new or returning player. Solo players seem to be winning, gatherers are especially going to be winning here. It's looking pretty good. Now, professions in Dragonflight and the War Within, they included this added complexity. All it takes, though, is a willingness to overcome it, and I hope that my work over the next month or so pays off. So if you don't mind, like the video if it was helpful. Sound off with questions if you have them, I'm sure you do. Subscribe so you know when the next video is coming out. Catch me live on Twitch, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.